Welcome everyone to Hacking HR Global Summit 2021. And today we have our panelists at our panel HR Innovation Future Work Conference, Thriving. We will talk about thriving in crisis through collaboration and communication. So before we kick off, I would like to remind you to officially register at the event link, and I will put it in the chat now, so you can go and officially register yourself so that you can get all the announcements, the recordings, and everything about the event afterwards. And please, also when you visit the webpage, you can download the event guide with all the details. So the event guide will give you the whole schedule of the event and also all the details about these sessions. And I would also like to remind you that towards the end of the session, I will put the SHRM and HRCI codes, recertification credits. And so in order to just get them, you should be staying until the end of the session. And towards the end, I will also send another reminder and put them in the chat section. Please make sure to note them. You will have a space in your guide too. Because if you fail to note them, there's not going to be a chance to retrieve them after the event. Okay, so I will make a short introduction for our panelists, and then we'll start the panel. So we have Blanca today with us, and she's a training and process facilitator in area of organizational development. We have Burak. We have Burak, who is Senior Expert Digital Solutions Mobility at BASF. Am I pronouncing it right? The German way? Okay. And we have Katie, and she is the Director of Human Resources at UNHCR. We have Faruk, who is Chief of HR and Information Systems and Photon Motors. And we have Luis Fabiano, who is the CEO, Latin America at Swiss Re Corporate Solutions. And I'm Mine Dedekoja. I'm the founder of Stardust, and I am consulting enterprises to transform their workplaces. Okay, so let's start. So we have been witnessing this COVID, the pandemic, over the last 1 year. It's almost been now a year now. So I would like to first start off with the situation that you had in your organization. So what were the first things? What were the first challenges, and what were the first things that got impacted because of COVID at the organizational level? Katie, let's start with you.
I was afraid you'd start with me. Hi, everyone. Really great to be with you. So I work for the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. That means we take care of refugees. So if I had to pick one thing that happened was, how do you make sure that you stay and deliver so that there are people to take care of refugees and not everybody sort of upping sticks and going home? And how do you take care of refugees virtually? So that was really our challenge. And I think the first thing that happened was that people didn't take it seriously. I felt like I was screaming and saying, this is coming, get ready. And people were like, yeah, sure. And so for us, the biggest challenge was really, how do we make sure that we can protect our people and also make sure that they get the right healthcare? Because we work in 150 countries around the world, some of the least hospitable places in the world that you don't want to go on vacation, let's put it that way. So it was really that challenge. How do we provide an environment where we can continue to deliver, but also take care of our workforce? And we switched pretty much overnight to virtual, especially on the headquarters environment. We sort of left on a Friday saying, we'll start drawing down presents. And by Monday, it was closed office.
Wow. So it was really quick for you, although it's a huge organization across the globe. Okay, so Luis, what about you? What were the things that got impacted right away after COVID?
I would say logistics. And hello, everybody. Really a pleasure to be here in HR Hacking again. Logistics. Logistics definitely for everyone was the thing that for me was the first impact. Because from one day to the next, everybody had to be at home. Not only the employees, but our brokers, our clients, our partners, like, especially companies working with offshoring, outsourcing. So all the system had actually to keep working in a remote way. So many companies, they were prepared for it. But although nobody was expecting a global pandemic situation, like, I can have a disaster recovery plan in a country, I can have a business continuity plan in another one, and they're both effective. But nobody was expecting that everything had to work remotely all at the same time from one day to the next. Obviously, logistics is going to trigger so many things, like, the performance of people, the deliver of your products, the receipt of your products as well. So everything is going to be impacted by logistics. So say the very first one definitely for me was logistics.
Okay, yeah, definitely. I mean, like being like a global company, it makes it harder. So definitely. Okay, what about you, Barak? What was the first thing that got impacted?
Yeah, as the colleagues mentioned, there are lots of impacted areas, but I remember it was the 12th of March last year, and I was located in Dubai. I was responsible as a head of HR there. And when we decided to take that, we moved to the home office. We were ready for the processes, the techniques, but the mentality is not exactly what we are looking for, because this is, I will say in the beginning, everybody was happy because, okay, home office, not bad, with my children, with my family. But after a while, and I think we will discuss this kind of things during the session, this is the mental readiness is not there. Yeah? Because you are trying to protect yourself from the situation, but at the same time, you started to work at home with all additional workloads, I will say, because you have to manage everything at the same time. I think the mental readiness was not ready in the beginning.
True, that's so true. And Farooq, what about your company?
Hello, everyone. I'm really excited to be here. So, like Mine introduced, we are in the business of manufacturing vehicles in Pakistan. So the outbreak of coronavirus had seriously affected the global and the Pakistani economy, like all others. Major victims of the COVID-19 outbreak here in this part of the world were micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. We ran a research quite short on a quite short note, and we found that over 83% of the enterprises were neither prepared nor had any plan to handle such a situation. Further, more than 2/3 of the participating enterprises in that research reported that they could not survive if the lockdown had lasted for more than 2 months. So the first things which got affected in our case, it was not just one, but we were facing a variety of problems such as decrease in demand, supply chain disruptions, cancellation of our orders, shortage of raw material, transportation disruptions, among others.
Okay, so I'm like hearing all different kinds of things, but like in general, the mental health was also really important. And so since you are like part of organizations, like big organizations, and since the topic that we are discussing today is communication, so what was the biggest challenge in terms of communication? Because like you are like a part of these big communities, these big companies with lots of employees. And I mean, those employees, as you said, they had mental challenges because they were used to it, although it's like a global organization, although people are tech savvy and they are comfortable with digital tools, but they were still in the offices and they could just be like communicating face to face with each other in the offices. So what was the biggest challenge in terms of communication among your team members? Louis.
Sorry, I was muted. I would actually speak about two different types of companies at the time of pandemics. The companies who were prepared to be remote and the companies that were not prepared. Luckily, my company, Swiss Re, was prepared. So everybody had laptops, had remote accesses. So then we were really prepared to actually have a remote type of business. And And taking that into consideration, the challenge is noise. So what I'm talking about, people are used to work from home. They are, but not 100% of their time. And as well, when they were working from home, children were on the schools. They had, some other people, they were working in the office. So yeah, like you could have, one person at home, but not all the family at home. So certain families, they have a small space. They don't have an office. They work in a dining room. So you can hear some other conference calls going on. You can hear the children. You can hear dogs barking. So the noise definitely disrupts communication. So this also impacts on the ability of our employees, of everyone, to deliver on time and to keep the same quality. So I would say definitely noise. And for the companies who were not prepared for actually this type of situation, they actually had to get tools, to get softwares, to get hardware really in a fast pace to enable the employees to work from home. And then you also have a change management process because people are not actually, they did not have the skills to work remotely for a certain, let's say, long time. So I would say those are the challenge that I could see in communications.
So as you're talking about the tools, I would also like to add one more thing on top of the original question. So what were the tools that you started using that you have not been using, or what were the tools that you continued using, the digital tools for communication?
We can actually say about names in here, but we use Zoom a lot, the one we're using now, Microsoft Teams as well, very powerful. You can store data, you can store information, store sessions. Skype as well, it has become something, although it's, very, I would say, old-fashioned type of, I would say technology, but everybody is using Skype, MS Teams, and Zoom, and there are other tools coming in the market now. But anything we have requires that people have, a telephone line at home and internet access. And that was also another challenge. Some people did not have internet access, which may sound basic for certain countries, but for certain other countries, no, they don't have it. So we actually had to run and try to get some internet access to employees as well.
True, that's so true. So that brings me to Kathy, because I know that she has like people in 150 countries that she mentioned, and I know that she went through some challenges with communication. So what were those challenges, Kathy, and how did you overcome those?
Yeah, no, it's I'm sort of smiling as Louise is speaking because it's really, tell somebody to work remotely when there's no Wi-Fi, let alone network, right? You're in a refugee camp somewhere in the middle of literally nowhere. The interesting thing is that people seem to have mobile phones. That's what we've discovered. But I think I look back for us, we actually thought we were not ready for a more progressive policy on remote working, on teleworking, as we call it. And overnight, within a couple of weeks, we really 88% of the organization were working remotely in one way or another, and that was pretty spectacular, I have to say. And so part of that adaptation was really that we started using different tools. I think we've grown with Teams, because Teams was certainly not so sophisticated when we started, but we've grown with it. But I think for us, if I look at the biggest challenge, and that's actually not about tools, but really about how do we, for us, we send people to some of the worst places in the world, quite frankly. But our value proposition is you go there, we will take care of you. We will medically evacuate you if something goes wrong. And it's within 24 hours, we'll get you somewhere. But, with COVID, that wasn't possible. Travel wasn't possible. So the whole, the whole contractual, the emotional contract, not the physical contract so much, but the emotional contract had to be renegotiated because we were saying, stay and deliver, we need you to. And how do you show 18,000 people that you care? What we did was we really pulled out all the stops to we changed the tone in how we communicated. And we leveraged our senior executive team, so the High Commissioner and the Deputy High Commissioner, that they were doing a lot more video than they were used to. And we talked about things that we imagined and heard from our colleagues that they were worried about and scared about. And I think we were pretty open about the fact that we didn't have the answers, but that we were working actively to find them at the same time. So I think that feels like that worked because it established sort of a different relationship with the colleagues there and then, because people did stay and deliver ultimately, and we're a year later, so I guess it was success in some way.
True. And so what were the digital tools that you started using? I mean, apart from their mobile phones, obviously, what were the other digital tools apart from Microsoft Teams that enhanced the communication?
Well, a little bit depending on where you were. The good old satellite phones got put into use again. Unbelievably enough, I actually have one here because my own connection was pretty poor from my own basement, as it turned out. And also because, people were competing for bandwidth all of a sudden, right? But in some operations, we had literally, we bought those, we're going to call them dongles, that literally was internet by the minute. So operations would go out and buy this. And because we weren't prepared for that. We were prepared for doing anything in the middle of nowhere, but to have everybody go virtual, in the matter of hours was surprising. And then I think, in terms of other communications tool, we put all our faith, to be honest, in Teams. And we used to use Skype before, and I think it's worked well. Some of us went off kind of the grid and used Zoom. Our corporate CIO doesn't really like that because I think it helped to keep everybody on the same platform. But yeah, I think for overall that. But today, to be honest, a good old phone call is quite pleasant when it doesn't involve a video connection, because I think that's become the other challenge.
True. That's so true. So Farouk, what was the biggest challenge that you faced in terms of communication?
So to be expected, we knew that we had to prioritize our internal communications with our employees. So the number one concern, was to ensure that our employees are healthy and safe, and balancing that with the resources they need to continue their jobs both on and off site. So three things. One, we knew that we have to start from the top. So the managing director, the CEO, the top management were prioritizing very clear, quick, and sympathetic communications with the employees. With so much uncertainty created by the pandemic, it was critical to help alleviate fears by outlining what's known, dispel any myths or rumors, and clarify the road ahead that the company had to work to offset any negative impacts. Two, we knew that we had to make it personal. And times like these, a company had rightfully identified the employees' need an authentic, relatable voice that they believe in, because here in this part of the world, and like many other sectors, we have different kinds of mindsets and frequencies, so we had to align all of them accordingly. And three, we knew that we had to diversify the content. First, we chose to institute daily emails at the end of each day to inform our employees about the latest updates as they had tried to make sense of the situation. As we began to settle into the new normal, those messages, though have become less regular, have changed into a weekly letter or a video message by the company executives. The tools which we used were definitely at our point of time was Skype at the beginning, and then it was Zoom. Both platforms helped us to definitely help our people all around, and they enabled us to share a message with our employees through a social media type of interface which we had developed over the period of time, allowing for community discussions and sharing of that content. Another very important technology platform which I believe everyone here uses is WhatsApp. So the app acted as a text messaging tool amongst groups with participants from different departments located all around our units in different cities. With the COVID-19 pandemic being a global issue, it had required our employees to have the ability to share ideas quickly across different times and different places, different cities. So but like I said, one of one of the basic things, we knew that we had to make it personal. To help inspire, motivate, and simply share the good stories during this tough time, we had also prioritized sharing, those stories with our employees, and how exactly they were responding to the crisis.
True. So Blanca, you're working with organizations. Can you mute yourself? Okay. Thank you. So Blanca, you are working with organizations, and so during the pandemic, you've been also working. I know that you've been working with different kinds of companies. So what were the things that you were observing that they were like? What were the challenges, the communication challenges that they had over this period of pandemic?
Okay. Hello, everybody from my side again. Well, lots of challenges were there, but something that really stuck to my mind and something that was like a pattern and it was going all around. It's that big question. Okay, we know that we need to communicate in different manner, but how? What that is going to be? What do we need to communicate? How much of that communication is okay, how much of that communication is not okay, and do we really need to put our focus on that COVID part, or let's just pretend that it's not here, we are just working like in a different way now. And I was like, no, please don't pretend that it's not here, because it's here and it's really happening. And the other thing that already colleagues mentioned earlier, I work with organizations on their organizational development needs. I'm not going to go into the deep of that, but at some point I was really consulting clients when they started to work remotely on usage of that digital tools. Like they all know for Zoom, for Skype, for WhatsApp, but to really use them in a collaborative way, in a purposeful and useful way. I mean, not everybody were familiar with that. So the challenge was like to start from knowing for the digital tool, to start in that, to go in direction of skill. Like now I really know how to use it.
Yeah. So I mean that's so true, because most of the companies, they were already using these digital tools. Actually, not maybe so much using it, but they had it. So they were capable of working remotely. They were capable of using these digital tools, but it was the extent of usage by by their team members, because they did not feel the need to use these communication tools because they were in the office, or they didn't need it as much. So that's a great point. So Burak, what were the tools in your company that you started using for communication among the team members?
Yeah, as you mentioned, one of the company from your statement is BASF, because we are a global company and we were using most of the tools, MS Teams, or WebEx, Cisco WebEx, Jabber, lots of tools. But the aim of the usage is mostly 1 hour meeting, global meetings, or some people who are joining different parties. But now I think the most challenging part to use these tools for the social networking or social topics too, because now you have no chance to talk to each other. And it was the first challenge for me to set a meeting to say some chit chat for our colleagues, or coffee break. I have to set a meeting. Yeah, you have to set a meeting, because this is how we live now. The other tool, I will say, mostly, I don't know how you use the name in Germany. They call it Jammer. I know Yammer. One of the most popular, I think, tool is coming to Yammer, because this is the free space that everybody shares their ideas, their feelings, or what they are doing. This is another good tool I can say for the company. But the most important part, I think, the connection, the instant messaging is coming more and more. And I don't know how it is in your companies, but I really now seeing that the mail conversation is getting less and less, because everything you can chat, you can post in the MS Teams with the documentation, you can collaborate. So you don't need to send mail, wait for a mail, then send another mail. This is how I see the progress by using the tools. But at the same time, some other challenges is coming with this one, which we can talk about, the time management. Yeah,
True.
this is another
That's
big
so
problem.
true. Yeah, that's so true. By the way, I mean, it's so true that now, I mean, you know what they say? They say email is dead now. So it's all about instant messaging, because like you cannot wait for a response from an email. And I mean, I'm now working with some executives who are not reading their emails. I mean, I was just like asking one of these people, just like, did you get my email? And he told me, I'm not checking my emails. Why didn't you select me? So I mean, this is becoming so common that people are not using emails as often. But you also mentioned a very good point, and I would also like to discuss about that, the collaboration. So yes, communication is really important, but one of the topics that we have is also collaboration. So how did you shift the way you are working? How did you collaborate? How did your team members collaborate? And what were like how were you using the tools, the digital tools, for collaboration, to do things together? Luis?
Thanks, Mimi. To be very transparent, I think collaboration got a bit impacted with COVID. I think collaboration, when we were all together in the office, I don't think it was easier, but it was. I mean, we are all together, we can grab a coffee together, we can have, talk in the corridor, and things get, done easily. Even like sometimes approvals, you can get some approvals, some, handshakes, commitments more easily than when you actually working remotely in this digital, let's say, environment. Now, in my opinion, in order to collaborate, in order to ensure that collaboration is in our daily business, we have to make sure everyone is part of it. So I try to share all my topics with my team, so I don't actually hold data, I don't hold information. I share as much as I can. I make them part of the process, and I also ask for their opinion. So what if, because we are all working remotely, so I could easily take a decision and let's go for this project, let's go for this path, but let's make people part of it. Let's ensure that everyone can actually say something, obviously in a very structured way. Otherwise, it's also going to impact the time that you're going to deliver something. But collaborating in times that we are, with all the challenges we're facing, it's also important to understand the constraints of people being part of this collaborative model. So getting back to the noise I said before, I get emails from my team at 11 p.m., at 5 in the morning, during lunchtime, because they are, kind of trying to find the best way to work, because they are coping with daily family business as well, like children. Sometimes they have to be, in live schools, live classes with their children. So that's something important, how to ensure this collaborative, let's say, environment, knowing that people are not going to be connected at the same time that you are connected. So what I did was I was trying to adjust my time as well. I mean, I have actually a very, let's say, enlarged time schedule now to make sure that I'm close to my team members, my colleagues. But yeah, I think I don't see a very positive trend from a collaboration standpoint. I see that we're always trying to actually be more collaborative, but then the situation actually drives the other way around. It definitely impacts the way that we collaborate, not only in our own teams, inside our groups, but I'd say overall. Overall, I think it's one of the things that got heavily impacted by COVID.
So what about you, Kathy? I mean, having people all around the globe, how did you manage to do things together, to get things done through collaboration?
I think I distinguish, there are different phases in the beginning. So we're an emergency organization. We get quite excited, to be honest, when disaster hits and we're called to act. So I think in the beginning, there was definitely emergency mode for some of us. So I, with certain of my team members and I have a global team around the world, but with some of them, I was in very intense contact, and we were in meetings probably up to 16-hour days working, whilst we were homeschooling. Both my husband and I were both here, so it was chaotic to say the least, but somehow we got through that. And I think for me, what was really important in all of that, and that comes back to your point, Louise, in the office, you kind of see people, you see the informals, what happened here was there was almost like a tunnel vision to some extent. Those who were sort of in the emergency response, and those who were continuing to make sure that business continued on as usual, super important, right? That we were able to continue to deliver. And there, I think it put a different emphasis on how you manage teams virtually. And that wasn't something that we were really skilled on. So we did do quite a lot of outreach to say, what are things to be, mindful of in this world? So we had to also equip our managers to say, here are kind of the 5 things you need to do today. And I'd write a list to say, have I checked in with that person today, that person today? Mm-hmm. The ones I saw a lot, that was easy, because we were seeing each other probably too much. But the ones I didn't see, they were the ones that I worried more about. And then you knew the ones that perhaps were further away from family, had no network, and more vulnerable. So you had to kind of be aware in a different way. So I think looking back, that put a lot more pressure on managers. And then we had that phase where we sort of were no longer in emergency, we were in the mixed teams. Some were in the office, some were virtual. And that for me was probably the worst in a way, because some were, you had the office presence with some, and then you had to still make sure that you didn't lose out on the others. And so I think that was both the excitement of being back in the office for many, but also constantly continuing that sort of always on, because what you're saying, Louise, that the days have really extended themselves. So you had to be really mindful also now it's so easy when we're constantly connected to, I'm just going to send a message. But as a leader, we also had that responsibility to not be role modeling that behavior, because that sets the expectation that that's what I'm expecting. So if I'm sending a message at 10 p.m., I don't expect a response at 10 p.m., but they don't know that unless I'm explicit. So I think being a lot more explicit and using a different skill set were really the bigger challenges that I see in all of this.
Yeah, I think this is really important. I mean, setting a role model. I mean, setting like the leaders, I think, as you said, I mean, the managers, the leaders had so much pressure and also the responsibility on themselves, because like this is a change and they lead the change. And people just like follow them. And so it's really important that they set an example. And I would also like to mention one thing. I was working with a multinational company, and we asked them to put it in their signature, saying that I work remotely across different time zones. So I do not expect you to respond immediately, and I'm not expecting you. So it's like a both way. So to just like ease that communication, so people do not feel the urge to respond immediately. I think that's really important, because I think that's what was causing that stress and fatigue that people were feeling. Okay, so Faruk, what was the situation in your case? I mean, how were people collaborating, getting things done together?
So, as part of the whole situation, we knew that we had to come up with a plan. So after an extensive back-to-back meetings based on different researchers and collaborations with different organizations all around, we had cut it down into a 5-point agenda, the 5, in which we call it, the 5 imperatives for employee communications during this whole pandemic situation. So, which included, one was establish a regular communication channel. The employees want to know where and when they will be receiving, those kind of information.
You're breaking up.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. So the second one was to how exactly we'll be building a sense of connections. We all are social animals. We're programmed for frequent face-to-face contact. Yeah. So think about how we can create a virtual water cooler, an environment that supports social connection through things like chat, communities, and virtual events. The third one was to support collaboration and productivity. Many of our employees were experiencing remote work for the very first time, and like Louise and all other panelists have clearly said, it was for the very first time that they required help becoming and staying productive. Then came the point that we had to segment and personify our workforce. This is definitely a longer term project, but it's a fundamental step in improving the efficiency and effectiveness of internal communications. We believe that segmenting employee audience and creating employee personas will help us understand what different people and different employees require and what they need, so that we can tailor the communications to them, so that they can effectively explain themselves, they can effectively understand, so that the whole operations can be sustainable. And finally, we knew that we have to work on building an ecosystem for speed and scale. This is another longer term project, but one that is essential to a well-informed and productive workforce. Employees naturally gravitate to one internal communication channel or another, like many simply prefer emails. However, this should just be seen as a starting point of there's so many new ventures being identified, and so many new ventures being started off. So yeah, so this is how we are taking it as.
Great. So Blanca, you were telling that the companies were actually were being challenged by trying to find out the best way to communicate. So they didn't know what was over communication or what was the ideal cadence of communication. So what did you experience from those companies? Like, how did they find that ideal cadence for communication? Were they over communicating, or how people were feeling about the level of communication in those companies?
Well, I was trying to firstly to help them with focus. Like, okay, let's just stop for a while and focus, and maybe to encourage them to think about another question. And that is not, is this over communication and this is not over communication, but instead what we really want to achieve. At the end, what is the purpose of this plan or process or strategy or whatever we are calling this need, this burning issue that is in front of us. I personally don't think that in crisis, especially in crisis, there is such thing as over communication. I believe that we really need to communicate a lot, especially during crisis, but sometimes we go in not so good direction in that style of communication, or that clear and purposeful strategy of that, let's say, communication plan. So I strongly believe that we are social beings. We love to know things. We love to hear from each other. We love information. And the time when we feel like we are over communicated, I think that it's not about the over communication. I think that it's the conversations that are not important to people, and that we are providing them with something that it doesn't matter to them, and then they have this sense, oh my God, again this is like over communicating. But when you find out what they really want to hear, what is important to them, and Luis said something that goes to that point, to involve them. I mean, it's so simple way. Just ask them, how do you see this context now? What kind of tools would you like us, is in small teams? I'm not saying like on the major organization level, it's different, but every manager can decide how can he or she communicate and collaborate on everyday basis with the team. So
Sure.
I believe in over communication, but also I believe that you have to be like smart and clear what you want to achieve in different phases. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. So, Brock, what was the situation in your company?
Yeah, as the trend goes, maybe from my personal experience, we started with the daily check-ins or the lunch break events or some coffee breaks. But when the situation goes steady, I will say, because it is not overing, it will continue and you cannot live like this. It become a bit artificial every day doing. Then we started to make the vice versa. We started to ask the employee how they want to communicate with us. Is it something, because I'm following the chat, some people doesn't like the video conference or video conversation. Okay, then let's make a chat. Or some people doesn't like, okay, every day I don't want to say I'm good. If I have something, I will come to you. Okay, then let's find the way. But I agree what Bianca mentioned. There's no over communication. We have to communicate what they need to know and how they can feel involved, because they are not in the office anymore. They cannot see what is going on. And to make them aware what is going on, you have to communicate. You have to only find the balance, how they want to be communicated. This is the important part. And I think after a while in my company, we find a good solutions with the using more digital tools, more coffee breaks or something is triggered by the employee, not from the management. And I really, one of the fan of this Yammer, this is another way of communication, because this is not a forced communication. You put the information there. It is not only the company, the employee too, then others are joining this conversation. This is how I can see a good way of communication as of now.
That is so true. People really suffer from it. And I mean, they were having hard time getting used to this way of communicating. So, and I really love the fact that you've all been asking your employees, getting feedback. I think that's really important, because like I'm also reading the chat section and people have different ideas, different feelings. Sometimes we feel that this is the right way to do something, but unless you ask the employees, you never know how they feel about it. Even if you think that's the right thing to do at that moment, it's not going to be the right thing for the employee if they do not feel like it. So, Louis, what was the situation in your company? What was the cadence of communication? Were you over communicating?
I think it was spot on. I don't think it was over communication. I think getting back to what Blanca was talking about. So we're talking about a pandemic. So we have deaths, casualties. We have, parents, friends, colleagues. Either they are at home, they're locked, cities locked down, or even, close people, close families dying. Some sick in hospitals, some actually waiting for space in hospital in more poor countries where there's no good health system available for the population. So it is not beautiful, it's not nice. And yet we have to talk about it. I can tell myself, I stopped watching news on TV. I couldn't take anymore. I mean, I'm done. I mean, I just read a few, let's say headlines, how many deaths, how many people have been infected. Now we're reading about vaccination. So the media and sometimes the communication, if you do not have it well structured, it always tends to be negative. So we have to make sure that also bring the positiveness around it. So it could say we have 80% of people, that have received the vaccination, or it could say, oh, we still have, more than 60 waiting to actually go for the vaccination. So you have to see how to treat the communication. And I think the best way to communicate, and not actually over or under, is looking the right way to communicate, the right channel, the right language as well, right? So I don't bring like a physicist or like a doctor to really speak on, technical words to the team. I'm going to bring somebody who can definitely adjust the communication style, the words, so everybody can understand, and as well, open up for questions. Everybody can participate together. So knowing the level of communication, but as well the channel and how you communicate, I think is the best in times like this, because there's no positiveness. We're still in a very negative situation, very brutal, I would say, and the virus is actually changing now. So how can we change this? How can we have a little bit of joy, something positive? So that otherwise, and then we get back to something that I think that Blanca has mentioned, mental health, right? That's one of the things now we are really concerned about. Everybody's staying at home, the situation is not getting, beautiful. So we have to be careful. Communication definitely has to kind of thrive and drive something positive and not negative.
By the way, when we were having the intro call with Luis, he was going through COVID. So he had COVID back then, and he was like suffering from COVID, but he was such a nice person. I mean, he was just, because like we had a scheduled call, and I mean, he had swollen eyes. He wasn't feeling well at all, but he had this good mood, I would say, and he was just like sitting and just like chatting with me. I really appreciate it. But that's very true. I mean, because this is a depressing time. This is not like any other crisis. This is like we were concerned about the well-being of our loved ones, even ourselves, the children, and everyone, like the well-being of the world. So, and I do agree that, I mean, the mental health is also, maintaining the mental health of the employees is really important. So what did you do, by the way, to overcome those mental challenges, to keep the energy, the good mood of the people, like to make them feel like they are being, supported and that they feel more engaged?
What we're trying to do is to understand signals. That's the first one. And second, to get closer, to be personal, to be closer to, each and every employee of your team. Signals. Whether I mentioned before, people sending to you emails 11 p.m., 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, it's a signal. The tone of the voice as well, the body language of people, as well, the style. I mean, we all know our teams. We know every employee that really have some kind of regular communication with us, and you can read it. It's, this person is not doing well. So very small signals, we have to pay attention. And whenever we see a signal that is really, it may be a trigger for a stress, like a burnout, it's important that in this particular situation, we get even closer to the employee. So it's like if you go for bilateral, like in like coffee time, you may ask, how are you? Or you could ask, how are you really? Tell me about it. How's your family? Is everything all right? And people tend to actually start talking about business. No business. I want to talk about you, about how you are. Let's grab a coffee together. And that happened to me actually last week. So I was talking to one of my team members, and I said, it's been some time that Anna, she doesn't talk to me, and then she's being a bit far away, and I see her performance is not going well. Do you know anything? Is she doing all right? Have a chat with her. I think she's needing to talk to you. And then I asked her, is everything all right? She was devastated. She lost her grandma. Her mother was sick. She was sick. So Jesus. And I saw the signals, but I did not take the initiative to talk to her. And then I'm starting to change. I'm trying to really bring people closer. I'm not going to wait for people to invite me for a coffee. I'm inviting them for a coffee now. So, and by the way, we're all human beings. So I also expect that somebody is going to invite me for a coffee if they see I'm not doing well, because we also need it. We all need it. So I think it's important that we start seeing those signals and then start to get close to people, to feel more personal. I think that's really important to do.
Yeah, it's really important to remember that we are still human, even though we are communicating through digital channels. So Katie, I know that you have been doing an awesome job with engaging people, to keeping people mood up, and also through executive communication, like doing all those different kinds of communications, and also doing well-being activities and engaging people. Can you tell us a little bit about those things that you've been doing?
No, thanks. Thanks for the awesome job. I don't know. I think our workforce is probably at times felt pretty despondent, but I think one of the things I'm really proud of is that, like I said, we tried to strike the right tone, and we're still learning, so we're adapting, I think, throughout. But for us, it was important to get into the dialogue, and that it wasn't just one-way communication. And so what we did do is make sure we used Yammer, like I think everybody else, and Yammer became also a big platform. We had a lot of, and it was awkward at first, but I think every big milestone, we made sure that people were still celebrating milestones, birthdays, Christmas parties, and all these sort of things virtually. But we've also had, and I think this one is something I'm really excited about, we started global yoga, which, we're an organization of people that move around the world. So all of a sudden you'd be doing downward dogs with somebody that you used to work with in, Afghanistan, and you're maybe in New York. So it was that sort of hilarious interface, and not everybody was great at yoga, let me tell you. But it was also, big different things, cook-offs. There was a really hilarious cooking classes. People were showing their home offices. So I think we created a community there, which showed that it was okay to bring up serious topics, like I am struggling right now, but also to say, here's how I'm making the best out of this situation. So there was a really good mix. And I think that I have to say the not easiest in terms of getting everybody on board, but one of the things I'm really proud of was it's so easy in an organization like ours, where everyone's so motivated by the mandate, to almost take people for granted in a way. And so we almost kind of got used to this, and were we showing enough appreciation, I think, was a key question for me. So at the end of the year, we actually created a video where we said thank you in multiple different languages to everybody around the world, including the leadership team, saying thank you. And the key message was really, thank you for sticking with us this year. And then we gave everybody a day off. Now, this is a year where everybody had a lot of vacation that they hadn't used, right? But it wasn't about the additional day. It was the gesture of saying genuinely thank you. And the appreciation of this, that was really touching, because we're saying, wow, you really showed us that you care. And I think that was something that I have to say I'm proud of. And we did that instead of our normal sort of employee recognition thing that year, because there wasn't no way were we going to single out one person. It was everybody. And had I had an opportunity, it would have been a mirror for people to say, this year's employee of the year is you, because I think that was really powerful. So, I think that it goes a long way to really communicate, but also have a dialogue and show appreciation. And sometimes it's as simple as saying thank you for a job well done, really.
So true. So which of these things that you have been doing over the last 1 year do you expect to do from now on?
I think, quite honestly, if I look forward, I think we're going to continue to telework for the foreseeable future. I would like to see a world, as we're getting more vaccinations on the way, but I think we're going to be with this for a while, that we have a cadence where you have a couple of days a week in the office, a couple of days at home, and then you start having real weekends. I think that would be a nice thing for many of us. So more boundaries around the work, but that we don't lose the virtual dimension. Because I actually think in some ways we become closer than ever, because it's, as Louise is saying, it's kind of forced us to ask questions instead of just kind of being all about business. And I think that's been it's been a nice permission to enter into the organization. So I'm hoping that we can bring that with us into the future, whatever that holds, because, unfortunately, I'm not sure this is the last pandemic that we're going to see, but the world has certainly learned new ways of dealing with it.
Yeah, that's so true. And Blanca, what do you think is going to stay after the pandemic?
Well, I have to say my being and my personality and everything that I do highlights a lot of participation and appreciation. So that was happening with me and my surrounding all the time. For some people, maybe too much from my side at some point. So I will for sure keep on encouraging people to really everything that they learned now in this context, in this new normal or whatever, to keep on doing when we go back to that human part more, because I strongly believe we will. I mean, this is here and it's going to stay for a while, but we are going to bring humans back to humans. And the thing that I would like to see is this warmth and appreciation and participation that we made in virtual world. I would like to see it in our old world that we were living before COVID. But the thing that I personally, for myself, I'm going to do is much more that mental hygiene, whatever that means from person to person. Because when you do a job, when you are a trainer like I am for skills and the coach, sometimes you go in that role that you're always helping other and support others, and sometimes you just get lost when you feel down in this crazy situation. I'm not going to overshare, but Luis mentioned something regarding his colleague. Unfortunately, I had 3 tragedies from COVID in my close family, and it's still like fresh. And it's like that need really to have humans around you and really to speak up. I'm communicative, as you can see. I don't have troubles in asking for help. But at some point when everything was happening, and that is why I really enjoyed listening to Luis and the point of signals and recognizing them. But at some point I was really like not asking for help, not that I didn't needed it, but I mean, nothing was happening, like some blank line. So I would like to invite people that they use colleagues, that they use families and ask for help and do their mental hygiene, and to get rid of that awful belief that when you seek for mental hygiene that you're like crazy and you don't have control out of your life and out of yourself. Yeah, thank you for allowing me to express this.
That's a great step moving forward. So Burak, that was one question, and since you're an expert in digital mobility, I would like to combine it with my question about your expectation of how things are going to be after COVID. There was a question, do you envision a return to in-person collaboration, which has a certain cash again? So how do you see the future is going to be after pandemic? Is it going to go back to in-person, or is it going to be digital again? And if you can share one tip with our attendees as we are wrapping up.
Yeah, as you mentioned, I think the colleague is asking, are we going to turn back, and what about the global mobility? I accept that Katie mentioned, this is not the last pandemic. And I think the life, changed. So business learned that how to live in this kind of environments. That's why I'm not expecting that everything will be forgotten and we will turn back to the old version of living. But it doesn't mean we will continue like this too. I can give some tips that this new remote working will be embedded in our business life. We already started in our company, for example. Even in the recruitment, we started to make this kind of information that we are open to remote working after the pandemic too, from another city, but there are still some rules of the game from the countries. For example, you are not allowed to work from abroad in Germany. You have to be in Germany to be able to work in remote. So the life will change, I accept, but global mobility will be needed, because when you have a talent in another country, it is not remote working. You need to send the people with this kind of mobility, and I expect it will continue as it is. As a small tip, very shortly, I will say digital communication should be embedded in your daily life. If you are not able to do it so far, I'm sure everybody is doing. Which tool you want, it is up to you and your colleagues, but it will continue to be connected in the future.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Faruk, what are your expectations and the short tip for the days to come?
So it's very simple. I think it should be, as leaders, we should be able to provide a plan and act accordingly for the future. See, this whole thing, this whole pandemic, this one is undoubtedly related to employees' worries about their own jobs. Given the extraordinary crisis we're now enduring, it's hardly surprising that many people are anxious about their own organization's future and look to leaders for cues. Therefore, when communicating, emphasize what is going well for the organization. Further, share as much as you can about the company's strategy and planning for the future. Be sure to recognize those people, those assets, those employees who have gone the extra mile to drive business results, or they've been helping each other out, their colleagues, their co-workers. Can definitely have a positive ripple effect. Given how quickly and drastically the pandemic has changed people's personal and work lives, I tend to believe that we used to have a term by the name of work-life balance. It has somehow disappeared. It's more like work-life integration now. And all uncertainty that lies ahead, people are looking to their mentors more than ever for guidance and support. So as a leader, what you say and how you convey it will play a significant part in determining how the organizations perform during these difficult times and after. So,
that's so true.
That's
Thank
it. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for Luis. One last advice to companies.
I think for the future, we're going to see a hybrid model. I don't think you're going to get back fully to the office because economically speaking as well, think about real estate. We don't need all the spaces that we had in the office before. We need less. So we can definitely combine, and as an operations person, I have to talk about it. So we can definitely find a hybrid way of coping with being in the office and being at home. 2 days a week at home and vice versa, right? So at the time we spoke, meaning in December, that I was COVID. I kept working because it was Christmas time, it was New Year's Eve. I canceled everything. I was by myself, so I'm gonna be working, right? Even though I did not have the energy. So I started to have some naps in the afternoon, 15-minute, 20-minute nap, the famous Spanish siesta. It makes difference. The energy you get from a 15-minute nap in the afternoon is absolutely amazing. So everyone, if you have the chance, if you have the opportunity, try, because it's like you had like a full night of very nice dreams, and then you get up. You wake up, you are full of energy, and it's amazing.
Power nap. Yeah,
try,
power nap.
Power nap, exactly. 15-20 minutes.
I love the advice.
It makes a difference. It makes a difference.
Thank you so much. And Kathy, what is your one advice to the companies or the remote workers?
I think my advice to organizations is don't forget the purpose. If people know why they're going through whatever they're going through, they're likely to be more motivated to stay the course. That's what I learned through this exercise. And my other advice, if I can have two, is be explicit and allow people to disconnect, because by doing the disconnection, like really actively disconnect, you rediscover the joy in doing what you do in your work and your life. And I think that's something we're going to have to be really mindful of in the future, to actively disconnect. I didn't think that was going to be a thing, but I think it is now. So, and thanks a lot for this. This is a really inspiring discussion.
Yeah, I love it. I really enjoyed listening to all of you. And thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your experience with us today. And I would like to thank all the attendees for joining us. It was great to have you in this session, and hope you will enjoy all the upcoming sessions because we have so many beautiful speakers, wonderful experts. We have like around 500 different speakers in these sessions, and it's going to be 3 more days. So please stay tuned. Don't forget to download your guides to see the schedules. And don't forget, by the way, let me put it in chat. Don't forget to keep a note of your codes because you won't be able to retrieve them if you don't take a note now. So, okay, have a great rest of your days, rest of your evenings, wherever you are around the world, and hope to see you again.